Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I am your host, Warren Wandling. If this is your first time listening or you've been part of our community for a while, thank you for tuning in today. We all have dreams and we have obstacles in our lives. And my hope for you is that you overcome your obstacles while pursuing your dreams. I have a great guest with me today, Chuck Connealy. Chuck is a principal of Waterford Property Company and has been active in the commercial real estate industry since 1995. Chuck's innovative and focused approach has led to over 600 transactions with a total transaction value in excess of $540 million. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Thanks, Warren. Appreciate it.
I know we've known each other for a number of years, had the privilege to be able to work with you, so I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I am too. I know this isn't a plug for your program, but when we started to work together in 2013, it had a big impact on my business. So I am happy to do this.
Well, I appreciate that, Chuck. Well, within our conversation today, we help our listeners to overcome obstacles by providing strategies, tips, and resources to overcome those challenges as an obstacle buster. So really to start that conversation, as a principal of Waterford Property Company, tell us about your business.
Yes, we're commercial real estate brokers, and we focus on the office market in Kansas City. And what we do for our clients is we represent both landlords and tenants. And the way that we help our clients is we create leverage through options, and we make sure they understand what the current market is at the time that we're helping them with a transaction or with a project so they can make the best decision for their company.
Well, excellent. So what do you think is the greatest obstacle then for your clients?
Well, we got two types of clients, Warren. We have landlords and then we have tenants. So for landlords, the biggest obstacle is finding high-quality tenants for their buildings in a really competitive market. So there's lots of buildings available for lease or for sale in the market, and our job for our landlord tenants or our sellers is to find the best tenant or the best buyer for their building. Now on the tenant representation side, I think the biggest challenge for our tenants is to help them navigate the minefield of working with a landlord that negotiates and does deals every day. A tenant might be out in the market once every 5 to 10 years. The landlord is doing deals every single day, and there's a lot of pitfalls that we help them navigate so they don't get stuck with a big bill for tenant finish or a high expense pass through at the end of the year. And that's our job, is to really protect our clients.
Well, excellent. Is there a strategy that you've discovered that really helps those clients kind of break through that obstacle?
Yeah, the biggest strategy is, again, knowing your market really well and following. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot today, following a process. So we have a process in place. Some of our clients will come to us and say, we really like our current building and we don't want to move, but we don't want to be taken advantage of by the landlord. And we tell them that's great, but to really understand what the market is and to have leverage with your landlord, you need to have options. So we need to go out in the market and actually consider other properties, walk through that process with the competitive landlords, which means we would do a space plan, we would get construction pricing and actually receive proposals from those landlords. And oftentimes a tenant may love their space because they've been there for 7 or 8 years, but until they go out in the market and actually see what's available, they really don't know. So sometimes they want to stay and they go out in the market and they say, wow, I didn't realize there was all this cool space. And then they will move. But the process we use it's leverage through options. We take our clients out in the market. It's a very systematic approach of evaluating buildings. And then they typically have their own rating system for what building they like the best. Some tenants, it's about location and having a really nice space so they can attract and retain employees. To do that, they need a lot of amenities, and it needs to be walkable. And other clients, they don't see any of their customers at all in their space. So they want something that's functional, it's easy to get to, and affordable.
Excellent. So what was the key strategy that contributed to your success in building your business?
Well, I was really fortunate. I don't think there's a lot of successful brokers in Kansas City. Well, Kansas City is well served by a good brokerage community. But I was hired in the business by a gentleman named Ned O'Connor back in 1995. And Ned and I are now partners with our current firm. But at that time, he told me, here's what you need to do to be successful. And he said, the key is if you make a lot of money your first year, and that's why people get into the real estate business. It's not because they have this deep longing to make a difference in the world. I think you can do that in this business, but it's typically because they want to make money. And real estate's a good way to do that. But he said, if you really try to make money your first year, you're going to fail in this business because all you'll be doing is chasing one or two deals. And you might make them. They may come through and close. But the purpose of your first year is to do two things. And those two things are to learn the market very, very well, and then to make cold calls every day. So I probably made 20 to 25 cold calls every day in the first year in the business. And the goal of those 5 cold calls or those 25 calls was to make 5 good calls, which were to get certain information from tenants that I was calling on. And so at the end of the year, I'd made about 5,000 calls, and I probably had 1,200 to 1,500 complete tenants where I would have their expiration date, what their square footage was, who made the decision, what their rental rate was, and what their plans were at the end of the term. And I don't know if I've done 1,200 tenants is a lot. I usually do about 25 deals a year. So at the end of that year, I had a really nice foundation of people that I could call on in the future. And I didn't make very much money the first year. But having that foundation laid early on of how to build a brokerage business really helped me out.
It sounds like, because you started out with really the power of focus and then trusted that plan, that's what helps set that foundation, even in the midst of making those cold calls and just learning the market, but staying on track instead of abandoning that plan.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy. So Ned would see that I was getting discouraged in that first year. I would be in sales meetings every week with guys that, had just made a $50,000 commission on a land sale, and Ned would look at my face, and he could tell I was discouraged. So he'd come up to me after the meeting and he said, "Hey, your definition of success is different than theirs. Theirs is money and how many deals they're doing. Yours is how many quality calls you get a day." And he said, so if you get 5 good calls in a day and you enter that information into your database and send out 5 thank you letters, he goes, that's a great day. You can go home and be proud of yourself and feel good about your day. And he just continued to reinforce that. And again, I sold postage equipment before. I sold postage equipment for 4 years, so I understood how to make cold calls. But everybody that I called on that first year had done at least one more deal than I had because they had space. Mm-hmm. So it was really tough. That first year was really tough, and so Ned encouraged me and made sure that I did stay focused on the goal. And he would say what you just said, Warren. He consistently would tell me, because you got to trust the system. You got to trust the system. Just keep doing what I'm telling you to do.
Excellent. So how do you overcome obstacles on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think that starts really when you're a kid. If you haven't learned how to overcome obstacles by the time you're, in your 30s or 40s or 50s, I think you're going to have a tough time with that. So, when I was a kid, I just had parents that said, hey, life's hard. Just keep working hard and good things are going to happen. And I believed that and would continue to work hard. And I wasn't the most talented athlete or the smartest student, but I worked hard and usually good things would happen from that. But the main thing today on overcoming obstacles is going back to that process. So like I mentioned, we're in a very competitive field. So we run into, we fail a lot, or there's the potential for failure all the time. But we have a process in place. So when we do get bad news, we just don't throw our hands up in the air and wonder what we're going to do next. We know what we're going to do next. We have a process in place. So when somebody comes back and we think we have a deal and they say, the tenant finish cost for this transaction came in $20 a square foot higher than we thought they were going to, instead of panicking, we know what to do at that point, and we have a process for that. And so we just follow the process. And that eliminates the emotion of getting bad news when you just have a process to follow.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that's great for our listeners to pick up on that key strategy is to follow a process, whatever that process is, and not to get emotionally charged with a yes or a no, but to be able just to follow the process, because that will help produce success.
Yeah, over the long term, that's what works, and it's not glamorous, and it's not exciting for most people, but it works. And so, again, at the end of the day, when you look back on what you accomplished that day, if you followed the process and you made your calls and you did your follow-up and you made sure that everybody else that's involved in the project did what they were supposed to do, then you're going to have a satisfied client, and you're going to eliminate these surprises that we get during the day when you don't pay attention to things like that.
Yeah, excellent. I know that you've been involved with a number of civic organizations. How has this involvement impacted your career?
Warren, I don't know if it really has. I'm sure it has to some extent. I've never thought about measuring that, and the groups that I get involved in are groups that are meaningful to me. I'm not hoping to get any business from that. So while I'm sure that it's had some impact on my business, I don't know how to measure that.
So how about, according to the National Association of Realtors, in an article titled Biggest Challenges for Real Estate Firms Over the Next 2 Years, it was published around March 7th of 2019. The number one challenge for realtors is keeping up with technology. What's one strategy that you can share with our listeners to overcome this obstacle?
Well, we invest money in technology. We know that that's important as far as collecting data and processing information and then presenting information to our clients. We know that technology is critical, and it's never hurt our business in the past to embrace it. It's always helped us. As far as keeping up on what's new, we just keep our ear to the ground. We talk to people in our business and find out what's working for them. And then if we think it's good for us, we would implement it. We also have our office manager, Debbie Hoskins. She's really good with technology, and her husband is in IT, so he's able to come up with ideas for us too. Then if there's a webinar or something like that helps us use the tools that we already have, we sign up for those and try to take advantage of those opportunities.
In my research for the show, Chuck, I discovered that one of the top reasons real estate agents quit the profession is because they didn't achieve results quickly. How did you develop that persistence that was needed to become successful? I think we kind of touched on this before in reference to your plan, but is there any other additional insight that you can share?
Yeah, I think if you expect to make a lot of money early, you're just setting yourself up for failure. I think that's an unrealistic expectation. This is a get rich slow business. You plant seeds one year and you harvest them later. So if you expect to go out and compete with people that have been in the real estate business for 30 or 40 years and win business, that's just unrealistic. It's not going to happen. My daughter's playing soccer this year. She's a freshman in college, and if you're playing soccer in college, you're a pretty good athlete. But you can't expect to go in as a freshman and make a huge impact on the team day one. It's going to take some time. And if your expectations are you're going to start every game, you're probably going to be disappointed. If your expectations are I'm here to learn and contribute and help everybody out, then you're probably going to be successful. I would say to somebody that gets discouraged that things aren't happening as quickly as they should is you need to prepare yourself when you get into a business like this, because it is full commission. So I knew about a year before I switched over from postage equipment to real estate that I was going to make a change. And I talked to my wife, and we started to save money and set it aside. So I knew that I could go about a year without making a dollar and still be able to pay our bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I made any money at all, it was just icing on the cake. So that first year I mentioned I didn't make very much money, but I learned a lot and established a firm foundation. So the second year was a great year, and every year since then has been pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice for all of our listeners. If you're in sales or entrepreneur, that you're having the right mindset and that you're committed to the plan, that you're not going to abandon it when there's a first obstacle. You're going to overcome that obstacle, but have a plan in place so it can develop the business long-term instead of a short-term play.
Yeah, I think when people say they need a fallback plan, I think that's a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1,000 fallback plans out there. You can go get a job to make money everywhere. To plan to have that is not a good idea.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. So if you were sitting across the table from a sales professional or an entrepreneur, what bit of advice would you offer him or her from your experience in launching your business?
I would tell them two things. I would one, I've been, again, really, really blessed and fortunate to have Ned O'Connor,
Mm-hmm.
Who's my partner, but he's also my mentor in business. And I can go in and to his office and ask him a question about, hey, this came up. What do you think we ought to do here? And he asks me a series of 4 or 5 questions, and then I tell him thank you, and I go back and I know what to do. So I would recommend that if they can, find somebody that's willing to invest in them, either as a partner or a mentor. I think that's key. And the other thing is specialize in, pick a specialty. Don't try to be all things to all people. And then work your land. There's a verse in the Bible that says, whoever works their land will have abundant food, but the one who chases fantasies will have their fill of poverty. And I think if you get up every day and do what you're supposed to do, you become an expert in your field. You serve your clients well, and it doesn't happen overnight, but you wake up one day and you have a good reputation and people want to do business with you, and you make a good living. I think the people that are really trying to make a splash right away, and they chase a deal down, I think they end up frustrated. I think those fantasies, you learn so much about why they're so rare as you go along the process, because it's hard to make that happen. So I think if they just focus on their land and don't chase fantasies, they're going to do real well.
Jim Rohn is a business philosopher. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he's really known for saying, we're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. How has this concept impacted your career?
Yeah, I think that's true. I spend a lot of time. I spend the 5 people that I spend the most time with are my business partner, Ned O'Connor, my wife, and 3 kids. And those are the people I spend the most time with. And Ned's just sets a good example. He works hard. We're doing 4 or 5 deals right now, and just working with him and seeing how he puts his clients first. He's professional. He doesn't try to hurry through a deal, yet he has, time is of the essence. Do you know what I mean by that?
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, so he wants to get it done. He's working hard, but he's not hurrying. He's not trying to, if there's an answer or if there's a question that needs to be answered, we get that answered before we move forward. We don't guess. So being around him has had a huge impact on me. And then even though we're investing in our kids, they still teach us a lot. I went golfing with my 20-year-old and my 13-year-old about a month and a half ago, and I don't golf much anymore. But when I did, I played fast, and my 20-year-old lost a ball, and it was taking him a long time, and it was time just to move on. And there really wasn't anybody pressing us, but they were going to be up on us pretty soon. So I hurried my son and told him to pick up the ball, and he didn't want to. And then he didn't finish the hole. And I said, "Hey, aren't you going to finish the hole?" And he goes, "Dad, I've lost my enthusiasm on this hole because you heard me." And I said, "Well, Joel, these guys were going to come up behind us." And he said, "Dad, you're polite to the wrong people." And that hurt my feelings when he said it, but it was true. I didn't know those guys back there, and they really weren't that close. So I learned a lesson. I apologized to him for it. And so when you have kids that'll tell you the truth, it makes you more self-aware. And you have an opportunity to get mad at them, or you have an opportunity to say you're sorry. And so that was a good lesson. I think that being around somebody that's 20, that's as wise as he is, has had an impact on me.
Wow, that's a great story, Chuck. Thanks for sharing.
You bet.
I believe that success leaves clues, and one of those clues are the books that successful people read. So what are some of the authors that have really influenced you in your business?
Well, early on, when I got out of college, I was a self-help book junkie, and I would read Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar. I went actually and saw a conference with Jim Rohn that you mentioned, and I really ate those books up. Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. And early in my career, less than a year into real estate, I had a radical born-again Christian experience where God spoke to me and told me that he was disappointed in the life I was living, that he'd made me for a more noble purpose. And then he was giving me the opportunity to, give my life to his son Jesus and follow him, or I could continue to be my own God and go to hell. So it was pretty clear to me what, it's not much of a choice.
Right.
So at that day, I confessed my sins and gave my life to Christ. And so shortly after that, a friend of mine said, well, now you're a Christian, you need to read the Bible. So I started to read the Bible, and I realized that most of the business advice and positive, encouragement that these are positive thinking that these authors that I used to read, they took most of it from the Bible.
Right.
So I still read books frequently, but the main one that I read is I read Proverbs every day, which is where he who works his land will have abundant food, but the one who chases fantasies will have his fill of poverty. That's from Proverbs. And there's just so much good business advice in the Bible. One of them that has had a big impact on me is our business can be really emotional. And I'll frequently, someone will call me and they'll be upset and they'll say, this person did this or said this, and now they're going back on it. And the tendency for you, for a person, is to get emotional with your client. And what I've tried to do, there's a verse that says, the first one to speak, may seem right until another one comes forward and questions them. So, it's basically saying get both sides of the story before you form a conclusion and take any action. And there's all kinds of verses in the Bible that talk about he who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame. I mean, I'm like most sales guys. I like to talk. And so that's just a good reminder to close my mouth and listen and find out what my client needs versus me just assuming I know what the answer is.
Yeah, that's great. The Proverbs is a great book to be able just to focus on from a business perspective, because you're right. There is a wealth of knowledge that's in there in reference to how to build business and how to interact with your clients and your employees if you have employees as well.
Right. There's for your listeners that don't read the Bible, there's all kinds of wisdom in there as far as debt management, co-signing for loans, going into debt, what you should do in certain situations when people approach you, how to keep how to maintain a good marriage, how to when you're in a bad situation, what you need to do in that situation, which a lot of times is, we try to take a position of strength when we're in a difficult situation, and the Bible says, hey, sometimes the best thing for you to do is just run away, get away from it as fast as possible, so you don't have to deal with it.
Right. Well, excellent. Yeah, thank you for sharing your insight there, Chuck. I appreciate you being open to share that process and your experience as well.
Sure.
So what does the future hold for you? Any special projects that you're working on?
Yeah, we're always working on fun projects. The real estate business is, while I talked about it being kind of, it's a process-oriented business, it's still exciting and it's fun. And real estate in general, people are interested in it. When I sold postage equipment, it's hard to get somebody really excited about a postage machine. But
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's tough. But most people, they would, if they don't own real estate, they would like to. And it's typically, I would say, behind payroll. It's probably the second largest expense that a business owner has. If they have a company and employees, is either their lease or the building that they own. So people like to talk about real estate. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to look at a deal that somebody did and they were really successful. And there's a lot to learn from somebody that, again, this is a reference. Jesus talks about the guy that started to build a tower, but he didn't estimate the costs accurately. And so he couldn't finish it, and people came by and ridiculed him. There's several stories that have happened in Kansas City exactly like that. So people like to talk about where other people's successes and failures. So we're always working on interesting projects. For me, I really enjoy what I do. I've been doing this for 24 years, and some guys after 24 years of brokerage, with what we call street brokerage, they get tired and they want to either just invest in real estate for themselves, or they want to start developing buildings, but they don't want to go do the cold calling and in the brokerage. I still really enjoy it. So I'm going to continue to do this. We're going to go out and try to find bigger projects to work on where our entire company, we had a really big project we worked on for 5 years. The whole company worked on it together. And then our clients sold the portfolio after we leased it up for them. And that was really fun because most brokerage companies are more like wrestling teams than they are basketball teams. Each wrestler goes out and does their own match, and then they come back and everybody high fives them, but everybody else wasn't involved in it. They just watched from the sidelines.
Oh, sure.
When we get to have projects where it's like a basketball team where we're all interacting with each other every day, and putting our heads together to try to come up with solutions for our clients, that's fun. So we're looking for projects like that.
Well, excellent. So if our listeners wanted to connect with you, Chuck, what's the best way for them to be able to reach out?
Yeah, probably the best way, if you go to waterfordproperty.com, my information's there, and they could send me an email. And if there's a way that we could help them, we would love to do that. And if we can't, like I said, we're office brokers in Kansas City. So if they have a need outside of Kansas City, or if they have an apartment building in Kansas City, we don't do that. But we know good people that specialize in those areas, so we can always refer them out to somebody.
Well, excellent. Well, I'll make sure all that information is in the show notes when we post the show.
Okay, good.
Yeah, excellent. And highly recommend our listeners, if you are in that market for real estate, definitely to connect with Chuck and see how he can be able to partner with you.
Great. I appreciate that, Warren. Thanks.
Well, thank you again, Chuck, for sharing your strategies, tips, and resources, helping our listeners to break through those obstacles to achieve success.
You bet, Warren. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it as well. Until next time, this is your host saying, make it a great day.